Alright, on page 265, data from 200 flights was collected. The flights were categorized as domestic or international and late or not late. Is there an association between international flights and a flight being late? Find the relative frequencies of a flight being late. So total flights that are late, we're going to go to our late column and go all the way down to the total, and we see that 40 flights were late. The total number of flights was 200. And so we are going to divide 40 divided by 200. Your top number goes inside your house. 200 cannot go into 40, so we add a 0. And we see that 200 will go into 400 2 times. So this is 2/10 or 20%. Remember, to turn a decimal into a percentage, you carry your decimal to the right 2 places, and that's your percentage. Find the relative frequencies of a flight being late among international flights. So we're going to look at the number of international flights that are late. That's 10. Out of the number of international flights, there are a total of 50 international flights. And so we're going to do the same thing. We're going to divide 50. We'll go into 10 0 times. But it'll go into 100 2 times, which gives you 2/10. Carry your decimal to the right 2 places, and that is 20%. Compare the relative frequencies. International flights are less likely, equally likely, or more likely to be late than flights in general. So out of all of the flights in general, there is a 20% chance that they are going to be late. Out of just the international flights, there is a 20% chance that they will be late. Is there an association between international flights and flights being late?
Yes, ma'am.
I think so.
You think they're going to be less likely, equally likely, or more likely?
Equally likely.
They are equally likely. There is a 20% chance either way. So they are equally likely. Alright, look down at the bottom of the page. Compare the relative frequency of having a curfew and having to do chores to the relative frequency of not having a curfew and having to do chores. Does this comparison help you draw a conclusion about whether there is an association between having a curfew and having chores? So the relative frequency of having a curfew and having to do chores was 50%. So having a curfew and chores had a 50% relative frequency. And not having a curfew and having to do chores is also 16 out of 32, which is 50%. Not having a curfew, let's see, not having a curfew and having to do chores. You did not have a curfew, but you had to do chores. Not having a curfew and having chores is 4 out of 20, which is 20%. So you have a greater chance of having a curfew when you're doing chores. Draw a conclusion about whether there's an association between having a curfew and having chores. Does this comparison help you to draw that conclusion? Yes. It solidifies the association between a curfew and chores. And that comes from page 264, the example 2A that we worked out yesterday. So 3B, this is from our homework last night. Compare the relative frequency of domestic flights being late to the relative frequency of international flights being late. Does this comparison help you draw a conclusion about whether there's an association between international flights being late? Explain. So, our domestic flights that are late is 30. We have got 30 late domestic flights out of 40 total that are late. Let's see, there are 30 out of a total of domestic flights being 150. When I divide those, I get 2/10, which is 20%. And we knew that the relative frequency of international flights, so this is domestic, international flights we worked out earlier, that was also 20%. So does this comparison help you draw a conclusion about whether there's an association between international flights being late? 20% of domestic flights are late, 20% of international flights are late, so it does not matter whether a flight is international. There's still a 20% chance of being late.